Welcome, everyone. My name is Davin Chitwood with Kirkham Iron Tech, and I have our founder and CEO here, Tom Kirkham. And today we wanted to talk a little bit about cybersecurity for schools. And I have a little bit of experience with the school system here in our hometown, but this is a growing topic of interest, specifically after COVID. Of course, during that time, lots of schools were working remote and students were relying heavily on technology just overall to get their work done. And of course, staff and teachers were relying on technology as well. And after COVID, now every single student, at least where we are, has a device given to them by the school that they take home. And now with that, of course, all the schools that may have followed that practice, or at least based here in Arkansas, there's a risk, or at least a cybersecurity risk, that has grown exponentially compared to before COVID. And so now cybersecurity is becoming a necessity. And the case is, well, what do they need? What do they need to do? And one, we could touch on a little bit more. Why is it so important today?
Yeah. So you think about the information that is stored in a school system. Infrastructure. This information is stored on a server or wherever it is. You've got so much personal information about families. You might have income data. You may have medical records, and larger schools. They're going to document those things, and that makes a school subject to all sorts of compliance and regulations. But it's so personal because the schools are hooked into the family. Doesn't matter if you're private or public, it's part of the family. So all that personal information needs to be kept very, very secure. And I'm not even talking about the potential for a ransomware attack and they'll shut the school down. I'm talking about protecting that personal information. And then a lot of schools now have Wi-Fi that's available to the students. And it's very super critical. And this may be obvious to many, but it's super critical that those networks in no way talk to each other. That public Wi-Fi, all public Wi-Fi should be firewalled off from the corporate network or the school network or the hospital network, because you don't want just anybody being able to go in and hack stuff. I remember visiting the hospital. It's been a few years ago, and you could tell the security wasn't there like it should be. And I could quickly get in and see stuff that I probably shouldn't have done. But it's a lot beefier now. I haven't seen that in a long, long time, but it wasn't that many years ago where we would drive by a medical clinic and the Wi-Fi was wide open, and but as schools, you've got a lot of things that's going to get uncovered during that risk analysis. Okay.
Yes.
Now I know some of the lower grade schools, especially, they'll implement Chromebooks because they know that they can wipe it and have a brand new reinstall of the operating system in a couple of minutes. It's real easy. And so that way you don't even have to worry about it. Is it virused up? You just wipe them every day or every week or every month, just in case there are some malicious items on there. But Chromebooks purportedly have never suffered an actual ransomware attack, but that's mostly because it's a cloud computer. Now, I don't want to go down into the data privacy issues with using a Google product. But just know that Google's business is really not selling Chromebooks. They give away the operating system. Google's business is about mining their products, which is you. That's you and your children and your family and everybody you work for that uses Google products. So that introduces privacy issues. It's probably a little bit beyond the scope of this little quick video, but schools do have a lot, and we see all of these ransomware attacks, and this is back office stuff where this is happening, right? It's not the students or anybody that's on the public. It's always somebody in the back office. And it's something that honestly, I know it's easy to say we don't have the budget for it, but when you realize a serious ransomware attack could cost your school $1 million or more.
Oh, easily.
Yeah. Chicago public schools, and this was kind of interesting. Chicago public schools got hit with a major cyber attack. And so everybody was blaming the school system, but in reality, the vector was actually through faulty software from a vendor, because the vendor itself had attacks at other schools, and I think they themselves had an attack at their company. So just know that you need to ensure that your vendors are practicing, best in class cybersecurity defense as well.
Yes. And you mentioned a couple of things I want to focus on. Is one is ransomware attack. We briefly touched on it, but say you're maybe a superintendent listening to this, or a director of IT listening to this, and just simply think about what would happen, or what your plan is if you were down for, say, 2 weeks. Just the whole network was inaccessible. You were not able to access any data, or overall the computers were just not able to be used by any of the staff, teachers, administration. One, the cost associated with that downtime, but also how would that affect the daily operations? And if you think, well, 2 weeks, that's just not an option, well, then we'll talk about a risk assessment here soon, but you definitely need to have a plan in place. And of course, bring in cybersecurity specialists that will help you create that plan, and of course, avoid any of that downtime and overall ransomware attack that may occur. Now, also, of course, this is a brief video, but you mentioned budget briefly, Tom, and I know really around the nation right now, budget is becoming a huge conversation for school districts all over, just because there's lots of changes in policies and how money is supposed to be spent regarding school districts. And one, cybersecurity needs to be a focus in the budget right now. And from my experience, that's not a topic that's being talked about or being reported in the budgets. And I could see with upcoming compliancy requirements just regarding security, that's going to be a conversation that's going to have to be talked about and brought up sooner than later. And so if you're listening to this and you're in the school system, start thinking about that and maybe bringing that conversation up, or, hey, what are we doing for cybersecurity, or what do we need to plan to do? And regarding planning, my professional recommendation would be to have a cybersecurity risk assessment done. Starting with that, you would be able to see all the potential vulnerabilities that you currently have. And then that would be the first step to build the overall plan to, one, address those immediate vulnerabilities, but also create your cybersecurity infrastructure that's most likely going to be, there's going to be requirements to have certain security tools in place. Make sure you're providing a certain security environment regarding your school district, and getting ahead of the curve before you have to catch up, or even before you're affected by a ransomware attack. And so,
Yep.
you go ahead. It's to me, it's a super important topic, just because it's coming soon, and there's just so many, like you said, families and students and teachers that are affected by a ransomware attack. And you mentioned the personal information as well. It's a hub of personal identifiable information that needs to be protected the right way.
Yeah, and I'll also go one step further. Because of this apathy around cybersecurity, some people think it's hopelessness. I'm just worn out with worrying about it. I'm sorry, but
Not
get
going
over it.
anywhere.
Get over it. Cybersecurity attacks increase every year, right? And so just one of the basic things that might be overlooked, and it doesn't really cost you anything, is to enforce very strong, best in class password policies, right? These students are with the same teacher maybe a whole year. They get to know them, and if they know the teacher graduated from the University of Arkansas and she went to all the basketball and football and whatever else, and she just eat up with it, member of the Alumni Association, Razorbacks would be a really good guess for that teacher's passwords to the school system. And then other things they may learn about their pets and their children, and all these things we know you should never include in your credentials. Pets, children's names, wedding anniversaries, your school mascot. You really got to get a much stronger password policy.
Definitely.
And you don't have to use a password manager, but it makes it a lot easier. And that's where it does start costing a little bit of money. But cybersecurity awareness training will cut the risk in half.
Easily.
Just that
Immediate.
alone.
Yeah.
Because 95% of breaches are because of human failure.
Yeah.
So
Now, if you're interested in having one of those assessments done regarding your school, we'd love to talk to you. We actually offer a free cybersecurity and risk assessment to overall help you take that first step on understanding your overall security environment right now. And then, of course, we take that next step to help you build that plan, just as I said before. So if you're interested in that assessment, feel free to reach out, or if you have any questions or just want to talk about what you may need, or just overall what risk you're kind of concerned about, free to call, send us an email. If you have any other topics that you'd like for us to talk in these short webinars, feel free to reach out and we'll make sure to throw those in. But overall, we'll talk to you next week and we'll see you soon.